Welcome to the Gem State Report. My name is Brian Almon of the Gem State Chronicle. Visit gemstatechronicle.com for news and analysis that empowers you to make positive change in our state of Idaho. A couple stories this week to go over, and also I'm going to look at how some things work in the legislature, in our government, and answer a couple of questions. I hope everybody's been good. I don't actually see anybody tuning in yet, so all of this is just for the benefit of people who go back and watch the replay. Sorry about being late tonight. I was playing some board games with my children and I forgot about the time, which is just something that happens, I suppose. So let's see. Let me share my screen and go take a look at what the Chronicle has for you today. Screen share. I think it's the screen. Yeah, there we go. And hopefully, yep, microphone should be working. Camera is working. Everything is working. Excellent. So yeah, Gem State Chronicle here. Let's get rid of the name off of there. There we go. All right, yeah, the first time you visit the site, you'll see a little pop-up requesting you to subscribe. If you subscribe for free, which you can definitely do, you will get, usually it's about one post a day in your email. And it's just whatever I'm reporting on or working on or thinking about. Sometimes it's just philosophical musing. Sometimes it's talking about what's, trying to make sense of some of the things that are going back and forth in the Idaho political sphere. Today I looked at... this one here, Stirring the Pot, taking another look at YAL, Young Americans for Liberty, and some of the things they're saying. They're really going hard after our legislature, and it's really, honestly, in my opinion, and in the opinions of a lot of people, it's burning some bridges. It's causing their name to become very, I hate to use the word toxic, but that's kind of what it is. But I also looked at another group that's kind of doing the same thing. They're throwing around innuendo and accusations, and they're just trying to make people angry. And as somebody who would rather make you think, that just annoys me. But yeah, this column over here, left column Substack, that's what you get if you subscribe. You'll get it in your email. Paid subscribers get to support my work, and occasionally I throw in a little bit of extra information just for paid subscribers. I'll try to do more of that going forward. I know I've been slacking off here. That's always the conundrum that you face when you set up a platform like this. You got to make money because this is really my full-time job. Which means I should offer something for the people who give me money. On the other hand, my whole endeavor here is to bring you information. And by putting that information behind a paywall, then it's not available to very many people. So you see the paradox there. So I've erred on the side of giving away too much for free, really. But I'll try to throw in some extras for those who have so generously supported me, and I really appreciate them. Yeah, this week, since our last meeting, talked about what to do about Medicaid. So there's a bill, House Bill 345 is the newest bill, and it is moving through the process. I believe it passed the House a couple of days ago or yesterday. Once they get to March, they really start going through the bills. Today, the House went through almost their entire third reading calendar. The Senate is starting to pick up speed as well. So so House Bill 345 is a lot of issues with Medicaid expansion. That is, they had a bill originally, 138, that would request certain waivers from the federal government to allow Idaho to do things like work requirements and caps on the number of people who could be in the program. But it had a trigger that if those waivers were not granted by the federal government, then Medicaid expansion would be repealed, gone. As you know, Medicaid expansion was approved by the voters of Idaho in 2018 by 61%. A lot of people thought it was a good idea. I believe a lot of people were sold on a false idea that it would be essentially free and have no downside. Of course, the downside is that it's not free. It's costing over $1 billion in our budget. 90% of that is federal money, but again, that's still our money. It's still tax money, is still printed money that's driving us into inflation. But secondly, it just expands the number of people who are on government welfare. When you make it easier and easier and easier, raise the thresholds and expand the populations that can be covered under welfare, you're going to get more people on welfare. And that is I don't think that's good for humanity as a whole, but that's a whole different discussion. I go into that a little bit here. Look at the details of the managed care organizations, which is trying to set up. Nicholas Kleinworth over at Idaho Freedom Foundation has done a lot of great work on this. He's one of the period smartest people I know, but specifically with regards to healthcare policy, he's really has a lot of knowledge in that area. So that was one post there. Also just did a check-in here. Originally, before the session, I laid out a list of goals. 10 things I wanted to see: eliminate DEI, cut spending, cut taxes, regulatory reform, immigration, school choice, state sovereignty, sound money, personal liberty, and entitlements. And so I went through and I gave each one a grade. Obviously, we're not quite through the session, but I just wanted to check in here at the beginning of March. Eliminating DEI, it's incomplete. There's some good bills, but they're stuck. Call Senate State Affairs and tell them to hear Senator Ben Taves's bill, Senate Bill 1048, that eliminates DEI. Cutting spending, C. They're not actually cutting spending, and that's always the frustration. However, they are reducing the rate of increase. It looks like it's so far only about a 3% increase over last year, which that's good. It's not a cut. One of the problems with cutting spending is that Idaho's population is growing, which means our tax base is growing. Also, the economy has been improving year after year, really ever since the Great Recession, which means that's more taxes as well. So the government's getting in more and more revenue. And it's not that the government's raising taxes to increase spending. They're just using that surplus. They're even able to give us tax cuts, $400 million in tax cuts this year, $4.6 billion in tax cuts year over year over the past 5 years. So they're giving us a lot of that surplus back, but they're also taking a lot of the surplus to increase spending. And obviously during COVID, federal spending really went through the roof. So our government, our governor and our legislators, they've been able to have their cake and eat it too with regard to spending, in that they've given us big tax cuts, but also invested our money in various endeavors. And of course, whenever they invest money, sometimes maybe it's reasonable. We need bridges, we need roads, we need better schools, I guess. On the other hand, there's a lot of malinvestment with government, because how do we keep these things accountable? How do you know that, say, the Highway 16 project here in the Treasure Valley is efficiently using its money? Unless you sit there and dig through the spending reports on Transparent Idaho, and you do public information requests, and you know what to compare it to. What are other road projects of this type? What do they cost? Unless you can do all that and you know all that, you have no idea if they're actually spending our money efficiently. Whereas in the private sector, it's usually easier to tell, because they have they have more solid metrics. Same thing with schools. We keep pouring money into schools, and they keep not teaching children. Those standardized test scores say that about a third of students are actually reading and doing math at grade level. And the only answer, in the private sector, if a private school was performing that badly, parents would stop paying tuition. The school would go out of business. Parents would take their money and go elsewhere. But that's not how public schools works. Instead, they just come to the legislature and say, well, we need more money. And the legislature says, of course, because we support our students, we support our teachers, we support public education, and they dump more money into the system. And there's actually very little accountability. But that's why cutting spending is hard. But it's still something that needs to be done, obviously, because we can't just keep increasing government forever. Cut taxes, they have actually done well on. $400 million. Obviously, a lot of people wanted to see grocery taxes eliminated. That's not going to happen. And that's caused a lot of frustration and consternation. But nevertheless, we've got income tax lowered, grocery tax credit raised. Property taxes, they're moving some more money. It's still the shell game, as with House Bill 292 a couple years ago, where they're taking revenue and moving it to property taxes. If you look at I always look this way when I talk about property taxes, because I have my property tax bill on my bulletin board beside me. And here, I'll even show it to you. Make sure redact any addresses or anything. Basically, this is the interesting part right there. How's that? Does that work? Basically, it's the list of all the things you're paying for with your property taxes: taxing district, Ada County, Eagle Fire, Ada County Highway, Eagle City, West Ada School District, College of Western Idaho, Emergency Medical, Dry Creek Cemetery, Eagle Sewer, and the Mosquito Abatement District. And all of that adds up to my property tax bill. However, then at the bottom, it says homeowner property tax relief credit. And that's the House Bill 292 credit there, which is great. They're taking some of the extra revenue and giving it back to homeowners. That's generally a good thing. And there's another bill this year to dump essentially $50 million more into that fund to give to homeowners and an additional $50 million for school infrastructure. The thinking is that if you're giving money to schools for infrastructure, for building their buildings or repairing their buildings, they're not going to necessarily have to come to the voters and ask for a bond or a levy to do more construction. So that's cutting taxes. Good. So far, so good on regulatory reform. It's a lot of mundane, banal bills about moving rules into statute or consolidating rules or things like that. I think they're on the right track, so I give them an A- for that. Immigration is incomplete. Again, several good bills. E-Verify, making illegal entry a state crime. Those are good bills, but they're stuck again. So this could be an A at the end of the year. It could be an F. Depending on if those bills go through. School choice, we got school choice. It's not quite what we maybe would have wanted, but it's there, and it's a start. So I give them an A- for that. State sovereignty, I gave them a D on this just because we're not really seeing much of anything run through the session this year on state sovereignty. I think the fact that Trump won the election, it's kind of taken the wind out of the sails of a lot of people who are really pushing for increasing state sovereignty, reclaiming state sovereignty. There was a lawsuit that Utah filed against the federal government to try and get federal lands back in the hands of the states, and that failed. So, we're not seeing much in that realm. Sound money, we're seeing some good things. Some good bills going through. Personal liberty, all the specific things I called for in the previous article: anti-SLAPP, mask mandates, medical freedom, concealed carry on campus. A- just because we actually are seeing those move through. I mean, we got the mask mandate bill through. That's amazing. And then again, entitlements, Medicaid reform. So that's where we stand there. And then finally, this morning, I just wrote a little article about, like I said, the folks who are out there stirring the pot. So sign up at gemstate.substack.com. If you're at gemstatechronicle.com, you can click the subscribe button and it will take you to that page where you can enter your email and subscribe. It's free. Although if you want to support my work, you are certainly welcome. I do appreciate Idaho Family Policy Center, who has been supporting my work, as well as Boise Realty Group, Lynn Bradescu. She's a name here in the Treasure Valley in Boise. She's always giving to various philanthropic things. She's supporting people like me, which is wonderful. She's putting on a new, let's see if I can find it actually. Let me find it on a different screen to bring it over in case I go to the wrong spot. There we go. No, do not use my location, Google. So Lynn and some folks have put together something called the Syringa Speaker Series, and they're bringing Molly Hemingway to Boise next month to speak. And this should be a great event. So go to syringaspeakerseries.org, and sign up for that event. Molly Hemingway, she's a great journalist, great investigator. She wrote a book called Rigged, about the essentially how the 2020 election was stolen. And it wasn't about secret servers. It wasn't about Dominion voting machines changing votes. It wasn't about that. It was about how Democrats used courts and laws and procedures to essentially stack the deck in their favor. And it's essentially what the Time magazine said right after the election. They talk about how they fortified the election. Anyway, it's a great book. It really tells you exactly what happened in 2020 and how, it said how we can fight back, which the Trump campaign did in 2024. So, she does great work. It's going to be a great event. Go there, sign up, and support this group that's going to be bringing great speakers to Boise in the future. So those are my current sponsors. Looking at lining up a few more. If you have a business or you have an event or some organization and you'd like to sponsor the Gem State Chronicle, get in touch. You can contact me using this link here. It's just a contact form, or you can email me, editor@gemstatechronicle.com, and we'll set something up. So go check it out. Let's see. A couple of folks were asking some questions. So I threw up a thing on Twitter saying, ask me questions for tonight's episode. And let's see, what are people asking? If you're looking for gossip, I'm not going to bring you gossip. I am more about policy and just letting you know, informing you about what's happening, not about who is saying what. That really is honestly a frustrating trend in politics, and I try to avoid it. Sometimes I fall in and talk about what people are doing, just because I think it's interesting to know, or it's important to know. But you have some people out there, and I'm not going to name their names because that would defeat the whole purpose. Their entire job, their entire focus is on gossip, talking about who said what and who was seen hanging out with who and who retweeted who's platforming whom. And you see way too much of that. And the whole point of it is to try and cancel people. Oh, you retweeted that person? Well, don't you know that person is connected with these people over here, and they have views that are, wrong or outside the bounds of polite society? Well, you better disavow them. And of course, if you refuse to disavow, then you're the next on the list. Oh, you talk to Brian Almon. Don't you know that he's bad? You'd better disavow him, otherwise, it's going to hurt your reputation. It's nonsense. It's ridiculous. So no gossip. However, let's see some of these other questions. Somebody asked about bills that eliminate chemtrails. Okay, let me just say, weather modification is a real thing. Cloud seeding is a real thing. I'm not convinced about chemtrails. Contrails are a real thing. That's the, essentially water vapor coming out the back of the jet engines. People post these pictures of contrails throughout the sky and say, this isn't normal. I don't remember this when I was a child. Well, I'm not that old. I'm kind of old. And I remember it when I was a child. I grew up in southwestern Washington, literally almost right across from the Portland airport. And I saw them all the time. Again, I don't know. I'm not an engineer, not an expert in aviation, not a chemist. However, contrails are and have been a real thing ever since jet engines were invented. So, people have to be careful, I think, about their terminology. If you say, let's ban chemtrails, and then you still see contrails in the air, you're going to wonder what's going on. However, the question was, is there legislation regarding such a thing? And there is. Let me bring this back up. Remember, you can go see every bill that's been introduced. It's over here at the legislative website. And we have two bills that Senator Tammy Nichols introduced, cloud seeding and weather modification. So let's take a look. Cloud seeding, statement of purpose. It adds definitions and seeks to enhance transparency and accountability in Idaho's cloud seeding operations by requiring the Idaho Water Resource Board to publish annual reports detailing operational date, environmental impact, public engagement, effectiveness, metrics, and practices. So this essentially lays out, hey, we want to know what's going on with cloud seeding. Because again, cloud seeding is a real thing, trying to get, put like silver iodide, I think it is, into clouds that already exist, mind you. This, because when you see a contrail on a clear day, that's not cloud seeding. You can't seed a cloud that doesn't exist. So but they do put this chemical up in these clouds to cause them to essentially, as I understand it, the silver iodide particles attach themselves to water droplets, causing them to become heavier and fall as rain. I could be totally wrong, but that I seem to recall that was the case. And so the idea is to cause it to rain more in one place rather than waiting until the cloud goes somewhere else and rains elsewhere. I don't know if that's effective or if what the purpose is necessarily, but that's apparently what it is. So Senator Nichols, Representative Alfieri, they have this bill that will at least give us more information, which more information is always good. So they'll have to say, when are we doing cloud seeding? What's the environmental impact? Inform the public about it. Is it effective? Is it actually doing what they say they want it to do? So that's good. And this bill, this was a Senate bill. Oh, I lost it. Senate Bill 1064. I was actually watching the Senate today. They went to the 14th order. That's the amending order where they put amendments in bills. And they amended this bill. And so you could go here. This is the original bill text. It amends Section 424301 Idaho Code regarding cloud seeding, which, so as you can see, since it's amending, there's already a section in Idaho Code regarding cloud seeding. And now we have this amendment. On page 2 of the printed bill, the following hail, insert preventing frost. On page 2, delete lines 42 through 44. Correction to title. So the way this works, when you go there, if you see an amended bill, the bill text is the original text before the amendment. The amendment is the changes, and then engrossment is the incorporation of those amendments. So this is the new bill that they are now voting on. So this is the new bill with the amendments included. So that's that. And so it is now going to be filed for second reading, which means Monday it'll be read the second time. And then Tuesday, as early as Tuesday, it could be up for a vote in the Senate. So that's 1064. Senator Nichols also introduced 1065. This bill prohibits unauthorized weather modification and solar radiation management activities in Idaho to protect the state's environmental and public health. Weather modification, including cloud seeding and solar radiation management, could have significant negative impacts on agriculture, water supplies, and public welfare if left unregulated. This bill ensures that only authorized projects, such as those by the Idaho Water Resource Board, are allowed, providing oversight to mitigate risks associated with unauthorized weather manipulation. Additionally, the bill removes an unused taxing district related to weather modification that's not been utilized since the 70s. So that is the bill. It says that only the Idaho Water Resource Board is allowed to do weather modification. And if we look at the bill, here, repeal, new section 224301. So it's replacing this previous section 224301. By the way, look, weather modification districts added in 1975. So again, this discussion can get really bogged down because people go off on rabbit trails regarding chemtrails, but weather modification really is a thing. Obviously, this has been in our law for 50 years. And this would amend it here. Definitions, cloud seeding, solar radiation management, weather modification, prohibition. So person may not engage in weather modification. Exemptions. Cloud seeding operations authorized by the Idaho Water Resource Board are exempt from their provisions. So basically, this says you're not allowed to do weather modifications unless you're the Water Resource Board, in which case, combine it with the other bill, you have to report on what you're doing. Sounds reasonable. Now, 1064 is on the Senate floor. 1065, though, has not had a committee hearing, and it possibly may not. It was introduced in Agricultural Affairs, and that committee is chaired by Senator Nichols. So if she wants it to have a hearing, it will have a hearing. So we'll see what happens. If it doesn't have a hearing, then it's entirely possible she's been having conversations with people on her committee and finding that there's not really any energy for it, which is sometimes the case as to why those don't get heard. Let's see, what other questions do I have? If you got any questions, just put them in the comments. If you're on Twitter or YouTube, I'll see the comments. Facebook, I'll see the comments. I don't think I will on Rumble. So if you're watching on Rumble, come over to one of the other platforms or send me an email at editor@gemstatechronicle.com or brian@gemstatechronicle.com, and I'll see it pop up somewhere. Somebody asked, can you add ASL to the English as a state language bill? I don't know. That's really not my area of expertise. ASL, American Sign Language. The official language stuff is really often about printed materials. So when you print ballots or government information, it's saying that it should be printed in English. Obviously, ASL doesn't really count because that's a language of a visual language. It's not a written language. So I don't know. That's kind of outside of my experience. Obviously, the person references Data Republican, that the person who's been doing all the digging on Doge, who is actually a deaf woman. Another question: why does the legislative rules allow for desk drawer veto? Shouldn't all bills once printed be given an up or down vote in committee? Sure, why not? Let's go to Idaho Freedom. Yeah. Go away. .org. Yeah, they just had an article up today about that thing. The chairman's drawer, last year, Ron Nate had, I think it was Ron Nate, had an article about the very same thing, mainly focusing on Senator Jim Guthrie, the chairman of the Senate State Affairs Committee. And we're kind of seeing this here too. So, it looks like, who wrote this one? I don't see a name on it. I thought it was Rachel Hayslip who wrote it this, but in any case, it's talking about how the chair works and how this chair drawer thing, saying that it's in the chairman's drawer is just slang for the fact that it's in the committee but it's not being heard. In order for a bill to progress, as you know, if you're watching this, I'm sure you know that a bill becomes law by first being introduced, and a committee has to vote to print it. Once it's printed, it shows up on this website, gets a number, and then it awaits a full hearing. And that's the full hearing where the sponsor presents the bill, answers questions from the committee. Public is invited to come and testify. This is when you see members of the public testifying on these things. And then the committee votes on what to do with the bill. If they vote to send it to the floor, then with either a do pass recommendation or with no recommendation once in a while, then it goes to the floor, has the second reading, third reading, and has a vote on the floor, on the House floor or the Senate floor. Those, there's no public input. It's only the senators or representatives who are debating and ultimately voting. You have to get 36 representatives and 18 senators. And once it passes one chamber, it goes to the other side, goes through another committee hearing. So the public has 2 times where they can weigh in. And then it ultimately goes to the governor's desk where he can sign it. So while it's awaiting that hearing, that public hearing, it's said that the chairman has it in his drawer or her drawer. And the chair has essentially carte blanche at this point. If the chair doesn't want to hear a bill, then it's not going to be heard because it's the chairman who sets the committee schedules and the committee agendas. So yeah, there's your chairman's drawer there. Now, there are parliamentary maneuvers people can do. The committee as a whole can vote to pull it out of the drawer and consider it. After a certain length of time, the floor itself, the House floor or the Senate floor, can vote to pull it out of committee and consider it. Those, I've never seen that work, because even people who might otherwise be amenable to that specific bill, they don't like going outside of the normal parameters. They don't like doing something that is not done. Especially the Senate is very concerned with the way things have always been done. So they're very hesitant to go around the committee chairman, which means those chairmen have a lot of power. Senate State Affairs seems to be one of the worst offenders. Back before Senator Guthrie, it was Senator Patty Ann Lodge who kept things in her drawer. And I remember years ago, one of my first town hall meetings, I asked Senator Grow, my senator, can you just change the rules to say that you have to have a hearing on these bills? And he said no, because that's not the way it's done. Obviously, you need a majority in the Senate to change the rules. And there are practical reasons why chairs keep bills in their drawers. Sometimes they talk with their committees, and there's really nobody on the committee that wants to vote to pass the bill. And if that's the case, it's kind of a waste of time, isn't it? Now, obviously, we out here, the public, would like a chance to see the hearing, to maybe testify, and have an up or down vote. Political organizations, especially the PACs, they'd love to get up or down votes on these because they want to hold these legislators accountable, get them on record, say, okay, you don't like this bill? We'll have a public vote where you vote against it. And that's one of the reasons chairs often don't hear those bills, because they're protecting their committee members from having to make those hard votes, which obviously I don't agree with, because the whole reason we sent you there, the whole reason you're in public office is to make hard choices and to stick by them if that's your choice, if that's your principle. Other times it's just time, especially as we get near the end of the session, we're running out of time, and there's not enough time to hear all the bills. Remember, legislators are on 2 or possibly 3 committees. And as we get close, here into March, as we get closer to the end of the session, those committees get busier and busier and busier. And so there's less and less time to actually hear the bills, and they have to prioritize. They have to triage them. And so that's another reason, if they have some bills that have a lot of energy behind them, then they're probably going to give them a hearing. But other bills that they're saying, no, we don't really want those, then they might put those much lower on the list. However, one of the big frustrations with these chairman's drawers is when, especially on the Senate side, when they will refuse to hear a bill that already passed the other side. If the House passes a bill, especially by a large margin, then I really think they should give it a hearing. If 50 or 60 members of the House of Representatives support a bill, what right does a single person in the Senate have to veto it? Even the governor can be overridden with a two-thirds majority. But these Senate committee chairs, yeah. So some of the bills that have not been heard yet, yeah, it's a little disingenuous to call this one being blocked by a chair. House Bill 1, Representative Hostetler's school choice bill, it was filed as a personal bill. So that's not going to be heard anyway. So that one doesn't really count. There's a couple other ones. Yeah, this one, House Bill 11, this one doesn't really count either because this was superseded by another bill. Oftentimes they'll come in, they'll print a bill, and as they're preparing to do a hearing, they'll realize, hey, we need to fix this, or maybe during the print hearing, some of the members of the committee say, hey, I think you should address this and this and this. So what they'll do oftentimes is they'll come in with another RS, another routing slip, another draft of a bill, and instead of hearing this one that already passed and was printed, they'll hear this one instead. And so this one just gets stuck in the drawer and you have a new one. So something like this, House Bill 11 was superseded by another bill. Same thing with this, repealing Medicaid expansion. That was superseded by House Bill 138, which did pass committee and it passed the House. However, now they have another bill. So the Senate has two different bills on this issue that they could take up, 138 or 345. So it's a little disingenuous to include those in here. Those are duplicates essentially, and that there's a reason why they haven't been heard. Now, some of these are definitely, very, or I should say the Medicaid expansion repeal, it was superseded by 138. It's not the same thing. But the point was to provide an alternative in case 138 didn't pass. But yeah, some of these, this one's also a personal bill, so it doesn't really count. The preborn children bill from Senator Brandon Shippey. That one, he was told beforehand, I believe, or I'm told that he would. He was told it was just an informational hearing. They printed it, but they're not gonna send it anywhere. Another weather modification bill, AI regulation. So yeah, some of these definitely should be heard. I will say that I believe they're doing a much better job this year than before. Remember last year, the mask mandate bill passed the House, was blocked in the Senate. It died in Senator Guthrie's drawer. In fact, on the last day of the session, Senator Tammy Nichols made a motion to pull it from the committee, and they defeated it because the Senate doesn't like driving outside of the lines. But yeah, you notice a familiar name on this, Senator Guthrie. I don't know necessarily if how much is him just deciding unilaterally to block these bills and not hear them, and how much is Senate leadership. Senate State Affairs is the leadership committee. It has the pro tem, the majority leader, the assistant majority leader, and the caucus chair all on that same committee. So it's the committee they've stacked with the leaders of the Republicans in the Senate to ensure that whatever they want to happen happens. So I don't know who to blame there. You can blame Senator Guthrie, blame the pro tem, Senator Anthony. I don't know. But that is what it is. So go to idahoFreedom.org. You can read the article and check it out. Let's see, are there any other questions here? Nope. Not seeing any other questions there. I'm not seeing any in the chat. I guess everybody's just taking a nap on a Friday night, which I don't blame you. Let's come back to me here. And put my name back on here. I'm my own producer, so you'll just have to bear with me here. So I wanted to talk a little bit while I have a few more minutes here. I'm going to do a short episode today since I started late. Talk about administrative rules. Remember I mentioned regulatory reform as one of my goals here, and obviously DOGE is all the rage. People are really focused on the DOGE aspect of cutting the budget and saving money, and that's important. But there's another aspect too. It's about making government more efficient, making government better, making it use the money in a more efficient way, and also cutting out a lot of the red tape and regulations and all these things that build up around some program. Because you start a government program by statute, the legislature passes a law saying we're going to create this program to do this job, and they say to the program, okay, you need to do this job. So they start doing that job. They create some rules to do the job, hire some people, and eventually their mission expands. It creeps. It's like Department of Health and Welfare. I tweeted yesterday that I saw a billboard when heading into Boise yesterday morning talking about becoming a foster family sponsored by the Department of Health and Welfare. And I thought that was a much nicer, much more pleasant thing to see than the previous billboards that had a silly cartoon character talking about curing a hepatitis, whatever the letter was. And it's after a while, the mission of Idaho's Department of Health and Welfare really crept and creeped and expanded from where it started. And I've been really pleased to see the new director, Alex Adams, come in and really try and rein it back in and to focus on a core mission. In this case, his core mission is, foster care and adoption and helping children, which if there's anything government should do, maybe that's it. So expanding government's easy, contracting it's hard. Because once you have a program in place, it's like Ronald Reagan said, the closest thing to eternal life is a government program. Once it's there, the people in that program not only are doing whatever their mission was, sometimes their mission has ended long ago. I remember Ada County Commissioner Tom Daly told me a story of working in the Reagan administration where they they had to spend years shutting down a World War II era program. It was costing several $1 million a year. The program was created during the war to do war stuff, and then it just kept going. And because once you try to shut down a program, well, you're taking away people's jobs. You're taking away something that people can say is valuable. Every single program, every single one of our 189 state agencies and boards and commissions and everything, people will say that it's for a good cause, whether it's the Hispanic Commission or the Bean Commission or, the Beef Council. Just remembering these off the top of my head. You can see them too. Just go Idaho State Agencies, A to Z directory. And there we go. I think I showed you this before. The Department of Administration, that's a big one. Aeronautics Transportation, the Aging Commission. We need a commission on aging in Idaho because apparently before we had a government commission, people didn't know how to age. Agriculture Department, Air National Guard, Alcohol Beverage Control, Army National Guard, Arts, the Attorney General. Some of these are obviously necessary. I'm not sure others are. Barber and Cosmetology Services Licensing Board. I mean, you wouldn't want somebody to get their hair done by an unlicensed barber, right? Anyway, getting rid of all of these is hard because in every single case, they'll come to you and say, hey, this is serving this community and this is doing this good thing. And it's really not that much money. It's only a tiny bit of money. So that is what it is. But one thing I wanted to highlight here in the few minutes I have left, I've got this cool sheet here that I picked up in the Capitol. It's about how administrative rules work. So there's types of rules, what committees can do, and what's the result. Now, other states don't necessarily have what we have in Idaho, and this gives us an advantage right off the bat. When one of these state agencies, one of these government departments makes a rule, not only does the legislature have to approve it, both houses, both the House and the Senate, have to approve it. And it didn't used to be the case. It used to be only one side had to approve it, and once one side approved it, then it was approved. But now both sides have to approve it. Not all states have that. I was reading an interesting article a couple of weeks ago about how this could be expanded to the federal level. Imagine if our Congress had to approve every bureaucratic rule. Yeah, it might take a long time because there's so many bureaucracies up there, but imagine the good that would do, even just in slowing down the process. I was sharing with my homeschool students last week a clip of Ronald Reagan on the Johnny Carson show back in 1975, before he became president, talking about that very thing, how you have these bureaucracies and they're not elected, they're not accountable to the people, but they can make rules and those rules have the force of law. And if you violate one of those rules, unlike if you violate the law where you're innocent until proven guilty, you violate these rules and you're guilty and you have to prove your own innocence. I shared with my homeschool students the story of the Sackett family up in North Idaho, who bought a parcel of land next to a lake and wanted to build a house. Now the parcel was not connected by water to the lake or even to a ditch that ran near the lake. However, when they filled in a little wetland on that parcel to build a house, the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, fined them because accusing them of violating the Clean Water Act. They went to court back and forth for years, for like 10 or 15 years, before finally getting a final victory in the Supreme Court, in which the Supreme Court said, the EPA does not actually have jurisdiction over a puddle on somebody's property that's not even connected via a surface water to anything else. See, they'd taken the Clean Water Act, which gave them authority to manage the waters of the United States, and interpreted it in such a twisted way as to say essentially any drop of water on your property at all, and they can have jurisdiction. And if you disobey their mandates, then you'll be fined. And it took this family 10, 15 years and countless number of dollars. Pacific Justice Institute represented them. It took all that just to fight back. So, and that's the difference between violating a law and violating one of these rules. So these rules are important, and it's important that the people who make them are accountable. So that's why it's so great that here in Idaho we do need legislative approval. So I just wanted to go through this table with you. There's three kinds of rules that our legislature looks at. There's temporary rules. These are ones where if there's an emergency and the agency needs to enact a rule to take care of a current situation, they can approve the temporary rule. And if the legislature does not approve that temporary rule, then it expires on sine die. That's when the legislature adjourns for the year. If it is approved, it expires on June 30th, which is only shortly thereafter. So temporary rules are supposed to be temporary. There are pending rules, and this one's a little more complicated. If the pending rule is approved, it goes through a House resolution for all approved rules, goes to LSO, requires approval by House and Senate, and when both chambers agree on the rules, they go into effect. If the rules are not approved, then they are a House resolution says they're not approving that. And if you go through some of the resolutions on the legislative website, you'll see some of those. See some of those saying the rejection of rules or approval of rules. And then final rule in effect can be called up by committee. So even rules that are in effect can be challenged by our legislature. Now they're really too busy to do that, but it's possible that the legislature can come in and just reject all their rules, which they did once a couple of years ago. Legislature rejected all the rules and basically put us back to scratch. Governor Little then took credit for it. That's his picture with the chainsaw cutting through the rules, but it was pretty much the legislature who put that into motion. I just wanted to go through that just to kind of explain how that worked and the difference between a rule and the law. Laws are passed by the legislature. Rules at least have to be approved by our legislature, which again is not something that every state has. So that's, we are lucky to have that. And this year they are making an effort to move a lot of rules into statute, especially rules that have been around for say 50 years. So, the whole point of a rule is that the legislature says this department has to do this. Well, sometimes those rules are in pursuance of that. And if they've been around for a long time, then why not just move them into code where they are now more accountable and easily accessible to the people? And then there's other rules that they can get rid of. There's a lot of deregulation bills coming through. There's some bills taking away some of the things that we're supposed to license people on. I was in some committee this week. I was in a lot of committees, but it was a bill to remove licensure for some sort of hair curler device. I don't even know, but according to the bill sponsor, not a single person had applied for that license since they put the rule in place like 7 or 8 years ago. So, okay, why do we have the rule? That's part of the problem. We use the adjective Byzantine to describe complex laws and rules in a society, and it comes from the Byzantine Empire, which was the Eastern Roman Empire based in Constantinople, conquered by the Turks in 1453. And that they'd been around so long, and they'd built up so many laws and rules that it was a tangle, kind of like what we have today. If the government wants to charge you with a crime, they can find one because there are so many laws and rules that they can find something you did. The lawyer Harvey Firestein years ago wrote a book called 3 Felonies a Day, because the average person apparently commits 3 felonies a day, and if they really want to, they can crack down. Well, it's been a quiet evening here. Anything else going on out there? So go over here and refresh, see if there's any more questions. Don't see any. I guess everybody must be just enjoying their Friday evening, which, sure, great for me, great for you. Um, I was having a good Friday evening as well. Went to the park with the children, played some soccer and basketball, through the football, came home, played some board games. It was a good day. It's good to see spring coming back. Just a few weeks ago, it was cold, 10 degrees out. And now it's a very pleasant 50 in the afternoon here in the Treasure Valley. I know some folks up in the mountains are still digging out of snow, so sorry about that. But that's why you live there, isn't it? Because you want to enjoy the seasons. Well, I enjoyed winter, and now I'm glad it's done, and I'm looking forward to spring. Session should be over in a couple of weeks. They are moving through the bills fast. Obviously, the important thing is the budgets. Once they're done with the budgets, they can adjourn unless there's anything pressing on either side. And of course, the two houses, the two chambers are, sometimes they compete a little bit. If there's some pending bills from the other side that they don't really want to hear, then they might just expire. That's something you should know, by the way. Any bill that is not passed by the end of the session when they adjourn is dead. So anything that's pending, still in a committee or still waiting for a hearing on the House floor, if they adjourn sine die without day, then that bill is dead and has to be reintroduced next year. And let me just say, when it comes to getting these bills passed, I think the school choice bill, House Bill 93, is a really good exemplar of how to get legislation done. They tried the ESA bill in 2023, it failed. They tried a tax credit last year and it failed. But they came back with the tax credit again, and they negotiated. They worked with all the stakeholders, where they worked with the governor, trying to find something that everybody could agree on. I envision it too. You've got, that game, that toddler game with the shapes going into the holes. You got a square hole and a star-shaped hole and a triangle hole, a circle hole. Well, this is the act of getting a bill to the governor's desk and signed is like trying to make a shape that goes through all of those. You have to make a shape that can go through the House committee, and then the House floor, and then the Senate committee, and then the Senate floor, and then the governor's desk. It has to be one single shape that can go through all those holes, go through all those barriers. And that takes a lot of work. And I know people get frustrated with things like, why won't they hear the grocery tax repeal bill? Well, if you want to get a bill through, you've got to sit down and talk with people. And I think some folks have the impression that legislation is about just having an idea that is so good that nobody could possibly disagree with it and slamming it down on the table and say, vote for this. And like it or not, that doesn't seem to be the case. Our legislators spend the off season after sine die and before the new session starts next January, negotiating and talking and getting input and figuring out what you have to do to get a bill through. And maybe you have a great idea, but what the other people are asking you to do to make it palatable is not good. Maybe it's something that goes against the spirit of the bill. It goes against your principles. And in that case, that's tough. You got to maybe find other people who will get on board. You need 36 people in the House, 18 people in the Senate, one person in the governor's office, and that doesn't even count the committees. Sometimes you have a bill that'll pass the House overwhelmingly, but the House committee is stacked against it. And that sucks, but that's the way it is. And that's so much of political discourse today is complaining about the way things are and saying, if things were different, if the situation in Europe in 1944 was different, then we wouldn't have had to land at Normandy. But that was the situation, and so we did what we had to do. And that's the same thing with politics. You go to war with the army you fight on the battlefield before you. You don't just sit around wishing things were different. And I think that's probably one of the biggest lessons I wish people would understand. We do what we can. We urge our legislators to do what they can. But sometimes you just run into a wall and you got to dust yourself off and start over again. Yesterday, I was in the Senate Health and Welfare Committee, and they were hearing a bill from Representative Chris Bruce to require labeling of blood from donors who had taken an mRNA vaccine. Now, I think this is a good idea because the jury is definitely still out on this mRNA technology. mRNA, by the way, means messenger RNA. RNA is ribonucleic acid. It's a component of your blood, of your body chemistry. And the whole point of the mRNA technology is essentially to go in and kind of tweak you at the genetic level in order to heal you from a virus or give you immunity to a virus. That's the idea. It's an interesting idea, actually, but right now I don't trust it. We're still very early in this. They rushed it through during the COVID pandemic. I'm probably going to get knocked off of YouTube for saying this. And so the whole thing is it's untested, it's unknown. During that hearing, representatives of the Red Cross got up and said, "No, this is safe. We know it's safe. There's no scientific evidence that there's a problem." Well, but that's not how things work. You can't introduce a new product and within 3 years say, "Well, there's no evidence that there's anything wrong with it." This is the sort of thing that could cause problems 10, 20, 50 years down the line. So we've got to be really careful. So I like the idea of labeling blood with this stuff in it so that if you are needing a transfusion, say you have leukemia, as Representative Bruce had at one point and survived, you can ask, say, "Hey, can I have blood without that mRNA stuff in it?" And it's a great idea. Conservatives love the idea. It passed the House. But here in the Senate, some questions came up. The Red Cross people, even though they seemed a little too trusting in the science, as shall we say, they pointed out that there's currently no test for it. So yeah, you could ask a donor. When I donate blood, it's like 50 questions I got to answer. Have I taken this medication? Have I taken this medication? Have I gone to this country? Have I ever had this disease? And the have you had a COVID vaccine is on that list. However, what they said is that there's no way to test for it. And if there's no way to test for it, then they can't in good conscience or can't even legally label it as, mRNA free, because it might not be. They only have the word of the donor, and the donor could forget, or the donor could maybe decide, "Hey, I don't care about this, so I'm just going to say no." And then what? What happens if there are side effects? What happens if you are, getting treatment for something, getting a transfusion, and you request non-vaccinated blood, and you get it in you, and then you find out maybe there is some side effect or something that comes up that shows that that substance was in the blood? Who do you blame? Who's liable? Who do you hold accountable for that? And so those were just questions about the bill that made it untenable to proceed. And good conservatives, Senator Shippey, Senator Delaney, they ended up voting against it because of those issues. So again, my whole point with that is just to say you can come in with a great idea. Sometimes you don't convince others, and that's unfortunate. Other times, things come up, where you look closely at the wording of the bill and maybe it doesn't do what you think it does, or maybe it brings up further unintended consequences. And that's the sort of thing I would say, don't give up. Go back to the drawing board. Okay, how can I make this better? How can I make this do what I want it to do? If you have that idea, that's a great idea, then continue trying to persuade people to get on board. Continue negotiating. See what give and take there can be. Are there things you can add to the bill or take away from the bill that don't change the fundamental character of what you're trying to do? And that's an important skill that I don't think everyone down there has, but it's something that hopefully they'll develop, because it's necessary. It's how you get things done. I mentioned Senator Brian Lenny. He's been very impressive this year. The last couple of years, he came in like a wrecking ball, and he kind of got stymied because people pushed back. They didn't want to work with him. They killed his anti-SLAPP bill on the Senate floor just out of personal spite. It was frustrating to watch. This year, he's done the work of going out and negotiating and getting people on board with his ideas, which have been great ideas, and he's gotten them done. Anti-SLAPP passed the House unanimously yesterday. He got his mask mandate prohibition through, and he's been having a great session. So it really shows that not only do you need principles, you need to be able to implement them. You need the knowledge and the ability to get them through that body. Like I said, it's trying to create a shape that will go through all those different holes, and it's not easy sometimes. So yeah, I just want to end with that. I don't think there are any more questions out there. Nope. I guess most people are just enjoying their start to the weekend. I hope you are too. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the sunshine. Enjoy the weather. wherever you are. If you're still up in the mountains, enjoy the snow. Next week is a new week, and I will see you then. If I can find my bumper music. Have a good weekend.